Hello and welcome to the Monday show here on the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined as usual by our Newcastle United editor, Aaron Stokes. It's been a busy week when it comes to the Magpies as their trip in Japan came to a disappointing end, but there was some positive movement in the transfer window with William Osula now on Tyneside for a medical, while the club remains in talks for Crystal Palace defender Marc Guehi. We'll discuss the latest on both targets and whether there's someone else coming in the background which could surprise us all. Plus, we've got the results of our poll where we asked the question, would you be happy with Brian and Burmo, or do you want a big name to come in on the right flank? That and much more coming up. Hit like, give a thumbs up, and leave us a rating and review. Let's get on with the show. Aaron, happy Monday. At this point, I'd usually ask you if you had a good weekend, but I don't want to risk it. The world is a bit of a mess right now, and I want to bring some positivity to our audience. So I want you to tell me one thing you did this weekend that made you smile.
Oh, well, I was going to say watch Newcastle United, but that didn't really make a smile given that they got beat. So, I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that, to be fair.
Come on, something positive.
There.
Did you have a nice takeaway, maybe?
No,
nice
takeaway
walk.
this weekend. No walks. Went out yesterday, saw some friends. That was good. Good catch up with some lads I haven't seen for a while.
There we go. Aaron, trying to bring a bit of positive, but just
failing.
dark. But yeah, just brought even darker clouds. I did a very adult thing. I bought a hedge trimmer.
Honestly,
I'm getting older by the day.
It's so exciting, isn't it?
Went to B&Q first thing on Sunday morning, bought a hedge trimmer. There we go. And we'll start with Newcastle United's defeat to Yokohama 2-0 in their final game in Japan. Again, like the last game in Japan, I didn't put myself through it. So what did I miss?
Well, you missed their first defeat of pre-season, which Eddie Howe won't be happy about. A game played in very, very testing conditions. The kickoff was about 7:30, 8 o'clock p.m. Japanese time, and it was still around 31, 32 degrees. It looked very, very hot and sweaty. Lots of drinks breaks. Look, I don't think Newcastle's first half performance was too bad. They had a lot of chances. They made Yokohama FM work. 7 changes at half time, completely disrupted the rhythm, completely lost any cohesion. And I think the Japanese side, who are midway through their season, just showed that they may have had a little bit more in the tank. So yeah, not the best way to end their trip in Asia.
But as you say, with the half-time substitutions, the conditions, the heat, it is the old cliche, but it's all about getting minutes in the legs, isn't it? It's not really about the result.
Yeah, 100%. Look, we saw Bruno again for the first time. We saw Captain Bruno, which I think was a very big step, and will do wonders for keeping him happy at the club. We saw Kelly for the first time, which is good. We saw Vlachodimos get his first start. We saw some very exciting youngsters in the form of Alfie Harrison and Trayvon Sanusi. And as you say, minutes under the belt, they rounded off that trip and they're on the way home and back to training this week.
Talk to me about Lloyd Kelly, because there has been some concern that we hadn't seen him yet in pre-season. He played from the start against Yokohama. What did you make of him?
Look, I think if the game was competitive and not friendly, probably would have been sent off.
Sorry, what happened?
He got a yellow card right at the end of the first half. Yokohama played a ball right over the top, caught Newcastle napping, and he brought the attacker down. He was quite far out from goal, but he was last man. He got a yellow. I don't know. I think he got away with one maybe. Other than that, I thought he was quite solid. You could tell that he's probably rusty. The plan was always for him to play 45 minutes, which he did. But I think the main thing is that we've seen him. We weren't sure, whether he was injured, whether he was just getting up to speed. Eddie Howe, obviously, he's just wanted to bide his time with him. But he certainly didn't look like a player that was injured to me. So just positive that we've finally seen him.
What's interesting there that you mentioned he's a bit rusty. I'm guessing you mean in terms of fitness, but also in terms of working with Eddie Howe and fitting into the way Eddie Howe plays. And we know that Eddie Howe, in an ideal world, would have liked to have more additions in, as soon as the window opens, so you can work with them throughout pre-season. We've got a question in, and I was going to ask you towards the end, because we've got quite a few questions sent in over our email, which is the eibwpodcast@reachplc.com. But I'll ask you now, and funny enough, it's from a bloke called Andrew who's written in and asks, we know things are starting to move in the transfer market, but do you think Eddie Howe will be unhappy with that? With 2 weeks to go until the new season, he's still really without any proper upgrades and won't have very long to work with them before the season kicks off. And it's that last question of the two that I really want to get your opinion on, because I think he will be.
Yeah, of course he will be. Look, he's stressed time and time again that he obviously wants players in. Ideally he wanted them in before Germany, never mind before Southampton in less than 2 weeks' time. So he will be disappointed. But look, this is the dice they've been dealt, and they've got to get on with it. I mean, somebody's just made a good point in the comments there live on YouTube saying, no new signings in at the minute before the Sela Cup. We obviously think that Osula is going to sign before the weekend. They obviously, for a lot of fans, it'd be the first time they've seen Kelly, but again, is that exciting enough? So yeah, they could really do with one or two in this week. And definitely in before Southampton.
Well, they have to be
They
before
have to get in
Southampton.
Southampton.
Darren says, for a make or break season, as we know how we'll be under pressure, the club not really helping them improve the side, which is an interesting take there. The midfield that started the game, the midfield three on Saturday, Joelinton, Bruno and Longstaff, possibly could be the three which starts against Southampton. Definitely would think Joelinton and Bruno, and then one of Longstaff and Willock. No Willock involved, was he, on Saturday?
No.
Did you see any positive signs? Do you first off think that will be the midfield three that starts against Southampton?
Yeah,
Joelinton, Bruno, Longstaff?
Yeah, I think at the minute that's looking the most likely by quite a stretch. Willock looked absolutely fantastic, by the way, in the first Japanese game. But the plan was always just to give him the first half there, and he was always going to be rested for Saturday's game. I think that Southampton will probably come a little bit too close for him. I think it's very telling that we've seen Longstaff start both games, even though he wasn't used against Hull. And Bruno, by the way, for his first game back, I thought was absolutely fantastic. Really, really sharp. Every time he got the ball, he was looking for Barnes, he was looking for Isak, and finding them with really nice balls over the top, especially in the first half. And as we've said, big shout to give him the captaincy. Lots of people have asked. Jamal Lascelles is still out. Kieran Trippier might not be at the club. Dan Burns' position is obviously under threat with Lloyd Kelly and potentially another centre-back coming in. The question is being asked, with those three potentially not playing, who becomes captain? And I think we've probably got the answer that it's Bruno, which is a good decision in my eyes.
Well, I'll read you a message from Bruno that he put out on social media after the game in a moment. But what I did see on social media was Longstaff coming for a lot of stick. I mean, obviously you saw the game, I didn't. Were the comments which I seen about him fair or not?
I mean, if the day ends in a Y, then Sean Longstaff's getting pelters on social media, and I think it was another case of that again. Look, it's pre-season. It's a pre-season for Longstaff that has been very disrupted. He's hardly played. He's obviously only played the last two games. I don't think it was a performance that was criticism worthy. I think we're seeing a lot of people just fall into the default setting of Sean Longstaff getting slagged off at every turn. He had a good opportunity to score, which he probably should have done better with early on when it was 0-0. Good save from the keeper. Had a couple of efforts in the second half where he was sort of blazing them over the bar. But I didn't come away from that game thinking Sean Longstaff was terrible and he deserved to get pelters on social media, but that was just me.
Last season, obviously, Eddie Howe came out and said, look, he's been playing with an injury, he's been having injections to get through the pain. Are we expecting Sean Longstaff to start this season fully fit? Is everything he dealt with last season, is that gone, and we're going to be able to make a proper judgment on Sean Longstaff simply because he's injury free?
Well, you'd have to hope so. He's had a full summer off. Obviously didn't go away nationally. Was he used on the Australia trip? I can't remember. But anyway, he's had a good rest. He obviously wasn't used in the games at Germany. Didn't make the match day squad at Hull. It was a bit of a surprise, really, to see him in from the start on Tuesday, and it was a bit of a surprise to see him play on Saturday as well. So the signs at the minute, though, that he's fit. He didn't look like he was carrying anything, but he played a lot of football last year while injured. You have to hope that hasn't carried into this season.
More minutes under the belt for Joelinton, who's going to be absolutely key, isn't he, to next season. Newcastle United were dealt a really harsh blow when he picked up that injury against Sunderland in the FA Cup way back in January, and he missed the majority of the season. Did he appear against Brentford, manager? He appeared against Brentford,
he
didn't
featured
he?
at the
But
end
by
of the
then,
season,
really, Newcastle United already suffered without him. How important is he going to be for the new season?
Yeah, absolutely huge. It's good that we've seen him get a good run of games this summer. Look, he'll be absolutely crucial, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Eddie Howe does with that third spot, because we know Joelinton's got one of them wrapped up. Bruno has obviously got the other wrapped up. And then I think it's going to be a four-way shootout when they're all fit between Tonali, Longstaff, Willock and Miley.
Miley when he's back?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, Miley looks like he's going to be out for a little while yet. Quite a nasty injury that he picked up early in the summer. But yeah, absolutely. I think he'll be in the mix.
Bruno went onto social media after the game on Saturday and said, "I'm very happy to be starting another season with this club that has done so much for me since my first day here. I'm glad to be back and more prepared than ever to have a brilliant season and help Newcastle reach the highest possible position. Another dream has come true. Being the captain of this team is everything I've dreamed of but never imagined. We're in this together and I'm sure I'll be more dedicated than ever to this badge." Nice little message to send out, and he's seeming very positive about the new season ahead.
Yeah, as I say, it was a nice touch to give him the armband, and I think it was it was quite noticeable before the game when he was obviously announced as captain. I think a lot of people sort of sat up and said, "Okay, big play from how to do it, very good gesture." It'll, as I said earlier in the show, I think it'll go a long way to keeping him happy here with no European football in the interim. And look, as I said, he looked fantastic. When he was on the pitch, he looked like he really enjoyed leading the team out. The messages that he sent, not just in that message on Saturday, but also in a video that he's done with the club, all seems very, very positive. And it's good because we've had obviously so many months of release clauses and Manchester City interest dominating the headlines. We're still going to get that, I think, for the next month with the likes of Anthony Gordon and Liverpool. But I think the Bruno one now, it's good just to shut the door completely on that. He will be here beyond the
if you haven't seen the video yet that the club put out when Bruno returned to the squad, I do recommend you go on their YouTube and you find it, because it's a heartwarming video, the way he's embracing all of his teammates, but then also going over to the youngsters, some of them that he's never probably met, and making time for them, and then all the coaching staff as well. He literally goes to every member of the coaching staff. Some coaching staff I've never even seen before, who just must be hidden away in the background, working their backsides off to make Newcastle United as best they can be. It was really nice to see. I think he was put through some extra bits of training as well towards the end of it after, shall we say, a very enjoyable summer for him.
Yeah, and there was a moment actually at the very end of the game in Tokyo where the match finished, Newcastle players sort of went over to the fans, but Bruno had to do the interview pitch side with the Japanese presenters, and they were sort of asking a couple of questions. It took ages because they had to get it translated. But Bruno's responses were really heartfelt towards the fans. He said he loves playing for the club because it's, the best fans in the world. And it just goes back to what we've said for months, wherever Bruno goes, if he wants to have a shiny new move elsewhere, that's fine, but he's never going to get the adoration that he gets at Newcastle. And I don't think he's going to find a fan base like Newcastle. So, if you're in the crowd at the Sela Cup or in a home game or an away game, just keep giving him the love. And if Howe keeps giving him the armband, happy days.
Is he going to be Newcastle's next captain, do you think?
Well, look, I think it just, for the reasons that I said earlier, there's a little bit of uncertainty now with Trippier potentially going, Burn potentially losing his place. Who steps into that role? A lot of people said Callum Wilson. Is he going to be fit? A lot of people have said Fabian Schär. I think for me, you give it to Bruno and you let him grow, you let him have that armband, give him the leadership, give him that sense of importance. And also, if you listen to Eddie Howe's quote on the matter, I think it was earlier last week, he says, look, he's a leader in the dressing room. I've got no qualms giving him that responsibility.
Yeah, fantastic to see Bruno with the captain's armband. The first outing as well of the new white kit. Now, we were discussing last week that we had to see it in person. We weren't going to make a judgment until we've held it in our hands. And I've got to be honest, I went up at the club shop, I had a little look at it, and I'm not as big as a fan as I was when I was just seeing it online.
Well, somebody walked past me at Eldon Square the other day with it on, and I think that's when I messaged and said I'm not really a fan. And if this bloke probably thought I was an absolute...
He stopped him and said,
yeah, because my eyes were following him because I was getting a proper good look at the kit, and he was probably thinking, who's that weirdo? And I thought, I don't really like that. But actually, watching them playing it on Saturday, I actually think it looks really nice. So I'm still a bit torn. I don't think I'm going to put my money and buy it. But saying that, from what I've seen so far of the away kit, I think that could be the best of the lot.
Do you know what I like? There's two items I like. I love the training gagoo that Eddie Howe had on a few weeks ago.
The black one. Oh, they need to release that.
Doesn't know that's going to be so...
They need to, because I would buy that.
Like the green kind of it's not a training top, but the staff at the club shot wear it. And if you watch the videos, Down Heels is wearing it over in Japan, and it, like the kind of fan liaison officer was wearing it. I think that's just a staff issue. Bit of kit, but it looks really nice.
I didn't think I would like it. It was one of the first bits of kit they released, but I've actually really grown to the red and white or the maroon and white training gear that they wear.
I'm not on board with it.
Again, I don't think I'm going to go out and buy it, but I think there's a couple of items there that have grown on us.
I do think the home kit looks superb, though.
Yeah.
It's a really good return for Adidas, and I'm just looking forward to seeing that store done and dusted as well in the next few weeks. Hopefully, it's going to be a big moment when that opens its doors. Another outing for Trevor Sanusi. He's been really, really impressive this summer. Eddie Howe has been asked about him, and the latest quotes are, he's definitely got talent. He's very clever with the ball. He's got lots of tricks in his bag that he can pull out from time to time. I'm excited by him. I think he's got the basics of a really good framework to build from. It's going to be up to us and for him to develop those skills and talents. So has he done enough in Japan to really force his way into Eddie Howe's thinking for the new season?
Look, he's certainly had a very, very good pre-season, and I think when pre-season finishes and the dust sort of settles, I think we will look back at this month or two, being really positive. He'll be one of the winners of pre-season. He's only 17. He's trained with the first team for a number of months. He's been very, very impressive for the under-21s. And he didn't look out of place. He came off the bench on Saturday, and Newcastle had completely lost their shape and they'd lost a bit of cohesion. The rhythm had gone. But every time he got the ball, he looked really, really positive. Took the man on at every opportunity. Looked very dangerous. Looks very agile. Looks very confident. He's got sort of shades of Alan St. Maximum about him, the way he sort of glides with the ball and takes players on. I'm really, really excited by him. And Newcastle signed him last summer from Birmingham, a little bit under the radar, the deal, but there was so many teams after him, and I think we can see why now, because he doesn't look out of place in that first team.
But Eddie Howe, while he's been Newcastle United manager, he's proven that we know he doesn't really like to use youngsters unless he's forced to. He's kind of forced into it with Lewis Miley. This time around, we hope that there's no injury crisis which leads him down that path where he feels he has to, even though he might not want to use a youngster. So the question is going to be whether the Zanuzai has done enough to turn his head.
Yeah, look, I think somebody replied to a tweet that I did about Sanusi over the weekend saying it's a shame he's not a right winger, and it is, because I think he'd have a lot better chance of playing if he was out on the right. But I think, as you mentioned, it's going to be very hard for him to get regular game time, given that he's fighting with Gordon, Barnes essentially for a place on the left. Look, I think we'll see a lot more of him in the matchday squads. I think he'll continue to train regularly with the first team. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him in the early rounds of the Cup.
So he's not going out on loan then?
Look, I don't think so at the moment. I think he's done enough so far in pre-season to really, suggest that he's going to stick around. I would give him a go this season.
I'm always intrigued though, and the only people that can really answer this are the youngsters that who go out on loan. But is it better to be in and around the first team, training with them week in, week out, being in the first team squad, not necessarily getting off the bench on match days? Or is it better to be going out to a championship side, to a League One side, and playing week in, week out and getting first team action?
I think it's better doing the latter. I think for a lot of the youngsters this summer, they'll take the opportunity to get them regular minutes at a decent level. I think Alex Murphy will go. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jamie Miley go. Ben Parkinson potentially as well, who was another who came off the bench on Saturday. I think you've got to get the minutes as early as possible. Look, it hasn't always worked out the last couple of seasons, if we've seen with Koala and a couple of others. But I think it's much better than them just sitting, on the bench in the first team, playing their under-21 games and stuff like that.
So for Sanusi, what can he do? He's got a couple of games before the Premier League season kicks off. You've got the Sela Cup.
He came off on Saturday with a knee knock. Eddie Howe said it was a precaution, but he suffered a knee injury at the back end of last season, missed the last couple of games, which was a shame because I think we might have actually seen him in the Premier League squad at the back end of last season had he been fit. So you've got to hope that it is just a precaution, it's just a knock. I would love to see him at St James's this weekend. Throw him in from the start for one of the games. And then obviously a decision's to be made, and then look, you never know, we might see him in the first team squad.
Well, we'll wait and see what the future has to hold for him. The trip to Japan, a success?
Yeah, look, I think, the videos that we've seen on social media and the fans that have spoken, seem to enjoy it. There's very clearly a big Japanese following over there. The club have obviously done a massive amount in the last year or so to try and grow themselves in Australia, in America, in sort of the Middle East, and now in the Far East. So it's another one ticked off the box. There was a really good interview that Lee Ryder did last week with a journalist out there in Japan who said, if you really want to grow in this part of the world, you need to sign a Japanese player. Now, Liverpool have obviously got Endo, Arsenal have got Tomiyasu, Brighton have got Matoma, and those three clubs are, by no coincidence, the biggest supported in Japan. So is it time to get Yoshinori Muto back to the club maybe for a loan deal? I don't know.
I would take Endo. Apparently he's up
yeah,
for sale at Liverpool.
He had a fantastic first season. He started really slow at Liverpool. And you thought, they've signed this guy, 30 years old, 16 million. But by the end of the season, he was really up to speed with the Premier League. I haven't actually seen that about him being up for sale, but yeah, really good player.
It was a German. That was Stuttgart. Maybe
Really
came in
good
for
player.
16 million. They said they wanted a bit more. They didn't shut down the proposal. They wanted at least what they maybe paid for. What I think was the report. So
good player, Endo.
Bit of experience, and just probably it provides that proper defensive element to the midfield that maybe doesn't come naturally if you're a Tonali, a Bruno, or a Joelinton.
It's just a shame, isn't it, that midfield already looks a little bit oversubscribed.
It does.
Do you really want to throw another one into the mix?
Yeah, it does. There's plenty of bodies there. But yeah, commercially, it looks like it was a big success, and that's only going to help the club grow in the years to come. Now, on transfers, we held an emergency podcast on Friday regarding William Osula. He's currently undergoing a medical ahead of completing a move. Good to get this one sorted and over the line.
Yeah, we sat here last week, didn't we? And we said, will they have someone in by Monday? They haven't got someone in by Monday at the time of recording at 2:20. And you check your phone and see if they've signed anyone in the last 20 minutes. But look, as you say, medical set for Monday. It's expected to get over the line. Osula wasn't part of Sheffield United's squad for their friendly against Huddersfield on Friday, but that was apparently because he suffered concussion in a game last month, so he's had to sit out the last two. But yeah, look, good to get one over the line. We spoke about it on Friday. Good to get another attacking body through the door. Young, versatile, raw, someone that Howe can work with and potentially improve. Ticks a lot of boxes, as we said.
Yeah, Slothy Vlogs says, I think it's a decent amount for a relatively low fee, considering how much strikers can cost. I've seen some suggestions that he will play a lot of under 21 football or even go out on loan. But given that he is costing an initial 10 million, and with United's luck with injuries up top, surely that's not going to be the case, right?
I wouldn't like to see him go out on loan. You'd have to hope that he stays in the first team. But I think he will play a lot of under 21 football. I think Howe will want to get him up to speed at that level, get him minutes, because we don't know how much Premier League football he's actually going to play. Potentially quite a lot at first, with Wilson looking like he's going to miss the start of the season. But I think after that, we'll definitely see him used as the out-and-out first-team striker in the under-21s.
There we go. Now on to Marc Guehi, rumoured fee of at least £65 million to bring the Crystal Palace and England International to St James's Park. This would, for me, be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, signing of the new era. One of the best defenders in the Premier League, only 24. Best player of the tournament for England at Euro 2024. His arrival would lay a marker down by Newcastle United, wouldn't it?
Yeah, look, I don't think I can disagree with anything you've said there. And I know, Alexander Isak fans and Sandro Tonali fans are going to come for us in the comments after this, but I think this would be the biggest transfer of the new era, of the post-takeover era. As you say, it would lay down a marker. It would be a huge deal in terms of beating the other clubs that are interested in him, like Liverpool, the likes of Tottenham. And look, everybody, even us two on this podcast have said, the big money needs to be spent on a right winger. The club are clearly thinking, we can go out and get one of the best centre backs. Yes, we're going to have to probably pay a bit more than we thought we would, but if they can do it, some deal. somebody else can pull it off.
It would be an absolute statement signing because he is, as I say, one of the best in the Premier League with his best years ahead of him. And I was so impressed with him at Euro 2024. He's a really good defender with top attributes. He's quick. He can pick a pass. He can dribble with the ball as well. Some people question whether he's got the heading ability, but not every man can be perfect. I just think it's just such a good sign if they can get this one over the line. Like you say, also beating some top teams too as well. And that's probably the only worry now that it's out in the open, now that we know Newcastle United are in advanced talks with him, that he is open to the move, which means he's open to leaving Crystal Palace. It does alert other clubs to the possibility of signing him. I think also when you see a price of £65 million, now you say it's a bit more than maybe they wanted to pay, but I actually think in today's market for a player of his quality, it's probably the going rate. Other clubs with a bit more money than Newcastle United or who've worked the books a bit better, they might see a bargain. Well, not a bargain, but they might see a player for less than you might have to pay in a couple of years' time.
Well, look, not even a couple of years' time. Virgil van Dijk, 75 million. Harry Maguire, 85 million. Fofana at Chelsea cost 80 million. Even someone like Ben White at Arsenal, I'm pretty sure cost them 50 million. Centre-backs these days go for this type of money. This isn't a fee that is out the ordinary. And as you say, Guehi's stock has only risen over the summer because of what he did with England. He's now a household name when he wasn't 2 months ago. Playing ability-wise, fantastic with the ball at his feet. We've been crying out for some pace at the back for the last season and a half, and he offers that. My only two negatives is the heading, as you've said. I think he lost half of his heading battles last season in the Premier League, and it's going to sound stupid, but he's only 6 foot. You put him next to Dan Burn, he probably doesn't look as big of a centre half as other teams have got. But look, I'm being picky here. Those are two very minor flaws. He's still a fantastic player at the peak of his powers after a really good summer. If they can get it done, as I say, it's the signing of the last 3 years by far, I think.
It's interesting you mentioned those two negatives as you put it, but if you partner him with the right person, then those negatives can be dealt with. You partner him with someone who's better in the air than him.
Exactly.
They might not necessarily have his pace. So you look to make that marriage up. And that is the next question, because he's a left-sided centre-back. That's why he plays for Palace. We all assume Newcastle United wanted a right-sided centre-back to rival Fabian Schär and eventually replace him. Where does he fit in?
Well, he played left side for England at the Euros. He played left side for Palace the last couple of seasons. But he is right-footed, and he also crucially played on the right side of Chelsea's backline before he left Stamford Bridge. So I think long-term, we will probably, if the deal goes over the line, I think we probably see a back four along it in the future of Tino Livramento, Guehi at right centre-back, Sven Botman left centre-back, and Lewis Hall left-back, which something to get excited about. All under 24 as well, all under 24, with the two centre-backs being 24 at the minute. So I think we'll probably see him probably fit. Let's just say signs. I think we probably see a back four or a centre-back partnership of Schär and Guehi to start, maybe. That can potentially mean you can move Lloyd Kelly out to left-back, or Lewis Hall, obviously, is out there. But I think long-term, he is the right-sided centre-half. And as I say, I think it's good that you've now got someone who can play in both of those roles.
I think back to the summer of 1995, when Newcastle splashed a British record on Warren Barton. And I suspect that the reaction to that probably wasn't getting the flags out. I thought a good signing. The fee probably spoke a bit more than the actual player. Newcastle are making waves in the transfer market. Then Les Ferdinand came a couple of days later, and you're just thinking that I can see that happening. I can see
they get one over the line, another one comes in straight after.
You get William Osula through, and then you get Guehi through, and then you get that right winger through as well. And hopefully, when one domino falls, the rest go. But I really, really do think getting Guehi through is such a statement sign. You were talking about a statement sign. We'll get onto it in a moment on the right wing. But for me, this is just a statement signing of this whole entire new era. It is a massive, massive coup if they can get him over the line.
And just to throw something else in the mix that we haven't actually spoken about, it's massive for Anthony Gordon. because they are very, very close
Good
friends,
pals.
good pals. They've played together at England senior level now and under 21s. And who would have thought this time a couple of months ago when Anthony Gordon was asked on TalkSport during England duty, who do you want to see from this England team come to Newcastle? And he said Marc Guehi. Look, we know that Liverpool's interest hasn't gone away, and this might just be something else. Plus a little contract offer on the table. It might be enough of a sweetener to say, don't let your head be turned.
Well, I was going to ask you about Gordon later in the show, but we'll do it now as you've mentioned him there. Talk that a new contract will be offered when he gets back from his break. Look, the first thing to say is that he's earned it. He was absolutely fantastic last season. And when you have seasons like that, you're going to get interest from other teams, and your club that you're at are going to have to, reward you for the hard work you've done. And as you say, it also kind of protects Newcastle when it comes to Liverpool's interest. It locks, Gordon down, and it means that if he does knock on the door and says, I want to move, then it's going to cost Liverpool a very pretty penny indeed. Do we see him getting a new contract before the season starts?
Look, hopefully, I think, we've said for weeks what needs to happen is as soon as he comes back from his holiday, which is going to be in the next couple of days, the arms need to be thrown around him. They need to be straight in with talks. They need to be straight in with a contract offer, and they need to be, reassuring him that, any attempts to sell him last month were, PSR induced. We had no real intent to let you go. Let's just play devil's advocate for a minute and say if he does go, that leaves them with a lot of work at the end of the window because they still need that right winger in. But now they would also need to go out and buy a top level. But like we say, get that new contract on the table. Hopefully get someone like Guehi over the line to, as I say, act as a little bit of a sweetener. And then head into the season with everyone pulled in the same direction.
We've got a few people watching live on YouTube talking about the chase for Marc Guehi and saying that Theo from AC Milan, who we all thought Newcastle United were after, and it looks like that it's gone quiet on that now. They couldn't agree on a price. Niall and Baz both make similar points, saying that, Niall says Theo is pretty much the same standard as Guehi, while Baz goes one further and says Theo is quality and cheaper. Do you think they've potentially made? What is the reason you think they're going after Guehi instead of Theo?
Look, I don't think the door is completely shut over Theo. I think they need to move quickly if they're going to do it because, by all accounts, AC Milan want this, this sort of saga wrapped up. That they aren't going to sell him late in the window because they want to get a replacement in. But look, I know we've just spoken for the last 15 minutes about how brilliant Guehi would be and how much of a statement sign would be. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't come off because it's such a big deal to do and they do have to go back to the table for Theo. The only thing I will say on the debate about those two, Eddie Howe has a real preference when you make signings like this. And Premier League football and Premier League experience is massive. We saw it with Anthony Gordon. We saw it with like Kieran Trippier and Dan Burn and Nick Pope. He loves signing players who have been there and done it in the Prem. Theo is younger, cheaper, but he's a little bit more of a risk because he's never done it in England. So, look, I would take either of them at this point. But I think Guehi is the more appealing at the minute.
Yeah, for me, I think Guehi probably gets people more excited than Theo. I just think he's the statement signing after a fantastic Euro 24 for England. Now, there is talk about a mysterious target being worked on parallel to Guehi, not thought to be Theo, but someone totally out of the blue. It's an interesting one because you're assuming that the person that has been referenced to, this mysterious man, would be in the same price bracket as Guehi, but you can't see them signing both. So I was just wondering how that even works because Newcastle are in advanced talks with Guehi. He wants to come. Eddie Howe wants him by all accounts. Then what would be the point of going after a mysterious target, even if it is someone like the chap from Everton, for example? Because you can still only sign one, right? Given their budget.
But let's just say, obviously Newcastle aren't doing this, but let's just say they were only talking to Guehi and they only want Guehi, through the door. But then it turns out they can't agree a fee with Palace, which could still happen, given that they're expecting so much and they value him so high. Newcastle are back to square one. It's good that they've got irons in the fire. I think they need to be talking to a couple just to say, look,
you're my third choice.
Yeah, you're my third choice. But look, as I say, interesting to see. We've seen it before. Remember last summer, big speculation out of nowhere that they were signing Nicolo Barella. And it turned out to be a complete smokescreen for Sandro Tonali. So Is Theo, is Guehi being used as one of those again? I don't know.
It is
Maybe.
strange how things work, isn't it? Especially with the Sela Cup coming up as well. The cynic and you might suggest that this has come out at just the right
I couldn't
time.
possibly comment on that.
But I'm always intrigued, like how it works. I would love to sit down with the person who actually puts the bid in, because in my head, like I'm always thinking, do they ring up on 9 o'clock on a Monday morning and say, right, we're going to bid 55 million for your player, get back to me, and then they let me just sitting there waiting for the. Is it like when you buy a house and you're waiting to hear back from the estate agent?
Get Paul Mitchell on the podcast and he can tell you.
I would love to know. It really does intrigue me how this all works. There are questions doing the rounds about whether spending 65 million on Guehi is sensible given the need to upgrade on the right. You alluded to it just before, Aaron. You would assume that if this deal goes through, then United are left having to sell to buy and therefore risk not upgrading at the right flank. I would argue that when a deal for Guehi becomes available, then you move to get it done, because if he has another good season at Palace, he's going to be worth at least 80 million next summer, and you're still probably going to be in the market for a centre-back. So it's a bit like the Anthony Gordon situation where it wasn't necessarily a priority, but the deal came up like for a player that they've watched.
Well, yeah, look, we were sat here this time last week thinking, Malik Theo is the top choice at centre-back. He's going to cost you 30, 35 million. That means you now go out and spend 65, or a fee that you're going to go out and spend on Guehi on your right winger. It looks like it's probably flipped now. Let's just say they do get Marc Guehi over the line. I think you're then looking at somebody like Nico Gonzalez, probably going to only cost you 35 million. Federico Chiesa at Juventus, being left out of their pre-season squad by the new manager Thiago Motta, and is apparently available for 15 million euros. Really detailed speculation over the weekend in Turkey that Paul Mitchell had been invited to the Turkish Sela Cup to watch Yilmaz from Galatasaray, who came off the bench as they were beaten 5-0, who again would probably only cost you 20, 25 million. I wonder, and again, look, I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, if later this week Marc Guehi gets done, they've spent 65, 70 million on him, I think Newcastle United have to sell. I think they move those first team players on to balance the books. They aren't out the woods PSR related yet. And I think too, it means we see a winger come in, but for significantly less than we thought they were going to spend.
But that wouldn't set people's excitement alive.
Well, that just segues onto the perfect topic about Bryan Mbeumo, doesn't it?
So the results of our poll, you guys would have watched on Friday and listened on Friday when we did that emergency podcast. Let me just recap. You, Aaron, said that Newcastle needed a statement signing at right wing, someone to get the fans excited, and that it wasn't Bryan Mbeumo from Brentford. I argued that he is the man to get people out of their seats with excitement. We put it to the people, and the question was, would you be happy with Bryan Mbeumo, or does the new arrival on the right have to be a big name? 68.4% said they'd be happy with Bryan Mbeumo. Get the lad in.
Well, have you brought that big slice of humble pie for me to eat? Because I will hold my hands up and say, look, I was wrong. I did the loyal Newcastle fans that I thought I had a read on so well. I did them dirty because I thought that it wasn't gonna be enough. But I put the poll in our WhatsApp on Friday after a podcast, and about 5 minutes into the poll, I looked at it, and it was about, I think there's been 20 votes, and about 15 of them were yes, Bryan Mbeumo was good enough. So I knew how it was going to go. I'm looking at this one here. 371 people said yes, great signing. Only 124 said Newcastle need to be even higher. So I was wrong. Bryan Mbeumo, who, by the way, I want to reiterate, would be a fantastic signing for Newcastle. Maybe he is exciting enough. Maybe he is. Well, clearly the proof is in the pudding that he is exciting
down
enough.
The wing and just.
Well, this is the thing though. Marc Guehi comes in. Newcastle are going to have to offload, a good chunk of players to get someone like Bryan Mbeumo in. They can't. I don't think at this stage they can go out and spend 120 million on two players without serious sales because PSR just won't let them do it.
Well, that leads me on to the next question. Kieran Trippier will be returning from his trip away after the Euros. The first thing that he has to do is sit down, and he probably has to also include Paul Mitchell in this conversation as well. And they need to decide what is going to happen with Kieran Trippier. Was that Instagram post all innocent and he was just winding fans up, or he wasn't winding fans up and he was just talking about seeing his pal over in Dubai? Is he going to be a Newcastle United player? Eddie Howe said he was looking forward to having him back, but this cannot go on any longer, really. Let's say he's back today. I don't know if he is back today. Whenever he's back in the next few days, the first thing that has to be done after the handshakes and the hugs is to get this sorted once and for all.
I think we'll know more about Trippier's situation and Gordon's situation in the next couple of days, because one, they're back on Tyneside, they're back in training. We are hopefully are probably going to see them both for a stage on Friday or Saturday at the Sela Cup. Eddie Howe will certainly be asked about both players on the weekend, so we will know a lot more about the situation. Everybody knows my views on it. You've got to keep Kieran Trippier at the club for the reasons that I've stated, because one, if he goes, you've got to replace him, and Newcastle just can't do it at the minute. And if they do, you risk not signing a right winger, you risk not signing a centre back.
You sell Kieran Trippier, you get some funds and get the wage bill down, and you put that towards signing that right winger.
You need to replace Kieran Trippier at right back if he goes this summer. But we shouldn't have this argument again, because I don't want you to be in the wrong again. So
have I ever been in the wrong? If we were doing this on Nando's again, I'd be having another Nando's.
So but look, they've got to get it sorted, not for the reasons that we just mentioned, but first and foremost because Howe won't want this hanging over the club. He'll want it sorted. He won't want this speculation running into the season. I don't think Trippier will want it running into the season. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the next couple of days.
A lot of people are talking about the chap from Juventus and saying, well, there's a reason he's worth £15 million. And I agree. I mean, there must be a reason that Juventus are wanting to push him out.
Well, this is the duality of man, because we've got Omar at 2:32 saying no to Chiesa. Then Brandt, half a minute later, I like Chiesa. Mark then says there's a reason that he's only 50 million. And Brandt again comes in and says 50 million would be a steal, all in the space of less than a minute. Then Niall goes to say Chiesa is a troublemaker and Juventus want him gone. Roger says, I agree, injury waiting to happen. Baz says he's got injury issues. All valid points,
and it goes back to the point about signing that big name, that statement, the one that's got his name in lights, who I think he would be, wouldn't he? Is that the kind of statement signing in an ideal world you're talking about?
Yeah, potentially. I think he's got very good pedigree. Again, it would be a bit of a risk, one, because, how has he been left out of Juventus's plans? What's unfolded behind the scenes? Why is he only available for 15 million? But then also, this is a man who started pretty much every game at the Euros for Italy. He's been in and around that Italy squad for years. He's been one of Juventus's most consistent players for years. There is clearly something there. You just got to wonder what's been going on behind the scenes to make him want to leave or make Juventus want to, get him out. I know that Juventus have had quite a big rebuild this summer. Thiago Motta's came in with his very distinct style of player. He's left 7 or 8 really key players out of that squad. Arthur Mello, who was linked with Newcastle, Rugani, the centre-back, good, solid first-team players that don't have a future under him. So I wouldn't be against Chiesa. I think it would be a gamble, but I think there's definitely a player there.
Lots of love in the chat for Yilmaz from Galatasaray, as Aaron spoke about just a few moments ago. Just going to jump into some of the questions here. Slothy says, I think it's either a centre-back or a right wing. We can't afford both. Brand says Newcastle score goals. They don't have issues with scoring. The defence is the most important item, in his opinion. That's why Guehi is the most important signing. Harvey says Brentford aren't going to sell Mbeumo. Niall says Mbeumo is a very good player. And Mark asks about training ground sponsor. This is that'll help with the PSR battle. Newcastle haven't got a training ground sponsor, and they haven't got a sponsor on the shirt as well. Training kit.
Yeah, there's been talk for months, hasn't there, that they had a deal ready to go and was waiting to be signed off, and we're still yet to see it. I think that's definitely next. I mean, you look at some of the funds flying about for training sponsors. I'm pretty sure Manchester United get 20 million a season from Tezos sponsoring their kit. Their training kit. I think Chelsea had 10 million with, I think it was Trivago. There's money to be made in Newcastle. It's absolutely obvious why they've been pushing behind the scenes to get one over the line.
Baz, to your point about Trippier and something I mentioned last week, that if he doesn't start, he won't like it.
Will he not?
He'll not start. If he stops, Tino Livramento is still the number one right back for me. Omar says the one signing I'm still very unsure about is Harvey Barnes. We've actually got a question that was sent in over email. Let me just read it out. Michael from Peter Lee says he wants to know why there is so much negativity towards Harvey Barnes. He's a top player, says Michael, and given a free run of injuries, he can be a major asset. Do you agree?
I do, but I think it's a very, very big season from because I don't think he's hit the heights that we all expected after paying such a big amount of money for him. Obviously, that's not all his fault because of that freak injury that he suffered last season, but he needs to bounce back for it. And it's going to be hard because he's not going to get the game time that he wants with Anthony Gordon out on the left. He didn't cover himself in glory on Saturday, but I'm not going to, dwell too much on that because he's just getting his fitness up. But he did miss some big chances in that defeat on Saturday. Big season from though. He's got to start delivering.
Worst case scenario, come the end of the window, if Newcastle haven't got enough in their budget to sign a right winger, could we see either him or Anthony Gordon out on the right and the other one out on the left?
No, probably not. I think if we don't sign a right winger, I think it remains as is. I think Jacob Murphy and Miguel Almiron battle it out. Rightly or wrongly, I think that's what happens.
If they don't sign a right winger, is it a failure?
Yes.
I think I asked you that last week, and we'll ask the same question again
next week.
Next week and the week after. No, we'll ask the question that we've asked for the last 2 weeks. People have already started mentioning it in the comments. Aaron, we sit here again on a Monday without a new arrival. Are you worried?
Honestly, I feel like Groundhog Day. I feel like we sit here every week. And look, it's clearly the podcast is doing well because, and there's some loyal listeners and viewers because I have had so many tweets this week saying, "Are you concerned? Are you still not concerned?" I feel like I get them every day. I'm still not concerned. I'm actually less concerned than I was last week. I know that they haven't got anyone through the door, but they're making strides. They're very, very close to getting Osula in, and I think by the time we put this podcast out, it could potentially be done. Maybe that's being a bit optimistic. And I think we're starting to see progress at centre back. We just need a little glimpse of what they're going to do at right wing. And I think we're laughing. As Omar says in the comments here, keep positive, and that is what I'm going to continue to do.
Yeah, Gary says the club are signing what we need for the season. Let's just talk about James Bunce. He's spoken to Newcastle TV in the first proper sit-down talk about his role and his first few weeks as performance director. And I have to say, he spoke really well, put any fear of a bit of tension between him and How to Bed. He said, "My job is to provide healthy, fit players to Eddie to do the amazing things he does on the field. Just by watching his sessions, there's never a dull moment. It's constant and relentless coaching, support and development of players." He was then asked about whether Howe's routines are maybe too tough and it takes its toll on the players. He said, from a performance department perspective, that's the perfect marriage. You want to see the physicality of the sessions and how we want to play. You really do want to see that from him. We have the same goal to win, win, win. There's never any conflict in that. The single North Star goal is that we want to win. That sounds, and I know he's not exactly going to throw a hand grenade in then and say something that makes you think they're not working together, they're not all on the same page. Take that as face value, though. I think that sounds like they're all pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, well, I think I've got a different set of quotes that I saw over the weekend as well. And he said, internally, the staff and players have been fantastic. It's a well-knit group of staff and players that are super humble, super passionate. There's a real collective togetherness. That does not, sound like a man who has walked into a club and he's been met with a hostile manager who doesn't want to work with him. James Bunce, by the way, at Monaco, his record was absolutely superb. It's no surprise that Paul Mitchell was so keen to get him in. He's going to address psychology, nutrition. He's going to look really in depth at what they're doing in training. And his main focus is getting those players available. And after last season, and the absolute disaster of the injury record, it sounds like a really, really shrewd appointment.
He's got his work cut out, though. Joe Willock's history. Callum Wilson's history. You've mentioned the youngster there that came off with a potential issue.
Lucy.
So it's already, a few little issues creeping up. He has got his work cut out.
Yeah, definitely. Look, and I think he will know, what went on last season, and he will know that they've got to work hard to rectify it. But look, for a club that want to be the best, they've hired best in class, and I think it's a really, really really positive appointment, someone who is, world class in their field.
Most certainly. And the other quote from the interview was yesterday. Me and some of the staff were presenting with his staff, that's Eddie Howe's staff, and discussing the schedule up to the international break past the Tottenham game. We're getting into that micro and macro detail every minute. Obviously, it's a new relationship, and we're trying to expedite that as much as possible to learn how we both work. I just love the fact they're planning so far ahead. They're not getting to a week before the international break and going like, what are we doing? Where are we sending the players? What's the diet plan? They're doing it weeks, months in advance. And that just backs up how big of an appointment this is, how good he is at his job, and that he's leading his team and leading Eddie Howe to this mantra, to this approach where you're thinking months ahead of you, where you can lay the groundwork, because the benefit of doing that, you'll get that back tenfold.
Can you imagine this under Mike Ashley?
No,
this would be Lee Charnley's job to try and fix the injuries. Look, you're absolutely spot on. I think both his interview that he gave over the weekend and the interview that we saw from Paul Mitchell in Germany fills you with so much confidence. This is two who are at the absolute top of their game, wanted by most clubs. I mean, Bunce, took a little bit of time out from the club game, went over and worked with the USA men's and women's team, the women's team who are the best in the world. This is someone who has worked with the best clubs. He's got mounds of experience. So yeah, but he's got his work cut out, but you're confident that he'll be able to, if anyone can rectify it, it'll be him.
Yeah, fingers crossed. VMV on YouTube says, at this moment, we have 4 midfielders available for Southampton, and Longstaff has looked pretty meh in pre-season. It might be out of the question, but I would also love a defensive midfielder in.
How much have you paid VMV
Nothing.
to pay that?
People can just see that they're lacking.
Can we just focus on getting a right winger through the door and a centre back through the door, and Osula through the door, and then maybe if there's any budget left to stretch, maybe we can get a.
And then when we get to November and the gap reappears between the defence and the midfield, I'm joking. I'm sure it's not going to happen. I'm sure it's not going to. I hope it's not going to happen. We've got Niall saying, what's the bet that the club pull one out of left field that no one has mentioned?
Yeah, we mentioned this last week, didn't we? They've got history with just pulling something out of nowhere.
I don't think Marc Guehi is necessarily out of nowhere.
No,
he has been linked before.
But I think the right winger, I mean, it's all gone quiet on that front, hasn't it? All the talk the last week's been about Osula. The last couple of days has been about Marc Guehi or a centre-back. Sort of quietened off a little bit at right wing.
Well, hopefully they get someone in there sooner rather than later. We've got a few questions, and I'll just remind you of the email address, the eibwpodcast@reachplc.com. Please keep sending your questions in. And if we get enough, after the Monday show on a Tuesday and Wednesday, me and Aaron will host a second show in the week. A lot of, can't recall it, maybe the mailbag or something, where your questions, it'll just be 20 minutes of your questions put to Aaron. So the email address again is the eibwpodcast@reachplc.com. We've got one from Tommy and Walker who says, hi, Aaron and Andrew. Hope you're both well. When Darren Eales spoke recently about the changes to St James's Park, he said the feasibility study would be imminent, and yet we wait. Do you know what the hold-up is and how long it will take to either come to a decision to leave St James's Park or to start work expanding it?
No, don't know what the hold-up is. It was reported a couple of months ago that the feasibility study was done. The club, came out and said that wasn't the case. Darren Eales obviously came out on the record and said that it will be imminent, I think was the word. God, remember that word? It used to be described about the takeover all those years ago. Imminent. I feel like I never wanted to hear it again. But he said that a couple of weeks ago. We still haven't heard, but I'm not sure what the hold-up is.
Yeah, interesting. Hopefully get some answers sooner rather than later. Matty says, afternoon, lads. After Osula and a centre-back, would the club bring in a right wing? As I've seen a piece this morning that says it would be dependent on player sales.
Look, I think, as we've touched on, I think PSR is still very much a thing, and a deal for Guehi or a deal for £60-65 million defender is really going to put the pressure on. And I think to sign a right winger, I think you need Almiron to go. He's still their only sellable asset, really, that you could see going. Trippier, again, how much is he going to get you? I think they will move for a right winger. They've got to. There's no ifs and buts about it. They need one. But I do think we're going to have to see player sales. And if those player sales don't come, I think they're really going to be restricted.
Do you think there's a chance there might be an out of the blue player sale? I know we talk about Miggy, we talk about Trippier, some talk about Longstaff. Obviously, we don't want to lose the likes of Bruno, Isaac, and Gordon. I'm not really including them as out of the blue because they have been linked, to exits from other outlets. So even though we don't think it's going to happen, but there are other players that maybe someone could come in. And like I'm thinking maybe like a Fabian Schär, for example, who's out of contract next summer. Would someone come in and tempt them with a £15 million bid? And would you take something like that to then help them bring in that right winger? For example, if they've brought in Guehi, it's not as bad maybe as a loss. Still a big loss. I wouldn't sell Schär, but kind of helps it there maybe. But in terms of out of the blue exit to help fund the right winger.
I don't think there will be out of the blue. I mean, if I'm honest, there isn't many players in that team that hasn't been linked with anyone. I mean, Joelinton's probably one. Schär's probably one. Burn, Tino, Hall. Apart from that, everyone else, Murphy, apart from that, everyone else has been linked with someone, whether it's tentative or not. Isak, Bruno, Gordon, Trippier, Wilson, Almiron, Dubravka, they've all been linked. And I think if anyone's going to go, it will be one of them. I know I'm not going to be popular for saying it. I'm still a little bit worried about Anthony Gordon potentially going. I think Liverpool are the only club in the Premier League not to spend any money yet. Richard Hughes, the new sporting director, is very keen to get a couple of players in before the end of the month. Mohamed Salah come at the end of his end of his career. I'm just a little bit worried. I think Bruno will stay. I think Isak will definitely stay. I hope Trippier stays. At the minute, it doesn't look like the interest in Miggy is concrete enough for him to go. And again, look, will Paul Mitchell and Eddie Howe turn around and say, look, we've spent 65 million on a defender. We've got Almiron and Murphy here. We don't have the money to go out and spend a right winger. Also, do we really need one because who's going to drop out? I don't know. That shouldn't be what they do because they need a right winger, as I'm tired of saying. But I don't think it's out the possibility.
Geordie Dance is not a chance that Gordon is going. Steven says, how much will we get for Miggy and Dubravka? I mean, you're looking at probably 20 million for Miggy. Dubravka, not much at all. A lot of people are still talking about Chiesa from Juventus. The one question I will ask you on him, Aaron, and we'll get an answer from you, is this one from Stephen. How do you lads rate a move for Chiesa? Realistic, unrealistic, top quality, or not the same player after injury? Would you make a bid for him after his price was seemingly reduced by Juventus?
I think in just terms of the first bit, I think it's probably a little bit unrealistic purely because he's been linked, but he's been linked in the way that, it just feels like Newcastle's name's always been put out there rather than any sort of concrete interest. It's been a lot of Italian outlets seemingly, mentioning Newcastle. I was saying over the weekend, I wouldn't be surprised if a club like Villa take a punt on him. It screams an Emery signing who would get the best out of him. They've done it before with players from Serie A. I think if he really is available for 15 million, like they say in Italy, I think you've got to take a gamble on it. Definitely.
You always have to ask the question why. It seems too cheap to be true, and that's not the saying, but too seems to get there.
I mean, look, how bad can he be? He started for Italy at the Euros.
But no, I get
every
that.
game. Do you know what I mean? There is a talent player.
Yeah, of course there is, talent-wise.
And for 50 million, do you not just say, look, I don't care if you've maybe got off the field issues or something going on?
You do. Because
15 million for an international?
But you do, because Eddie Howe's done such a good job of building a squad where there's harmony. There's no egos running wild. And eventually that's going to have to change, because as you progress, you will get players coming in who have big egos and they're big characters, and that will be disrupted. And personally, when that happens, I want it to be for the right player. I don't want it to be for this chap. I want it to be for a player who really gets you off your seat, who really makes you stand up, who makes you want to get the name on the back of the shirt. For the player who disrupts the dressing room for the first time has to be.
But we don't know that he's a dressing room disruptor. No, we are completely pulling this out of left field.
But there's suggestions.
It could equally be that he's just, he's spent years at Juventus after leaving Fiorentina. He might just be a little bit sick of it now. Just to put some weight behind why I think it is realistic, I've just done a little Google of Chiesa, and Liverpool linked with him, Chelsea, Lazio, Inter Milan,
can sign him instead of Gordon.
West Ham. Spurs being told to sign him. Roma linked with him. I mean, there's 10 teams there. It's complete guesswork as to where he's going to go.
Jory Dan says, look at Fraser. Eddie Howe's 0 tolerance for BS. Matty says, in terms of right wing position, do you think the club are looking more domestic players such as Neto Alanga and Maduka instead of players from Europe? I do. I think they are. I think you sort of see maybe the influence of Paul Mitchell by going abroad to Turkey and seeing Yilmaz. I think we know Eddie Howe has that preference, as you said. The example with Guehi of having Premier League experience. Whether it will be someone with Premier League experience, we'll wait and see. JK says, I think Gordon will stay and sign a new deal along with Isaac. I am in that camp as well. Harvey says, if we get 100 million for Gordon, surely you have to take it. No, I think you can even push the price up more than that. I think he's that good.
For Gordon?
I think if Liverpool want him, you're looking at 120 million at least. And you're saying, come on then, let's put your money where your mouth is. Gary says Liverpool already have 3 left wingers. They won't spend 800 million on Gordon. As I said, that's not even going to be enough anyway to get him through the door. This has been the Everything is Black and White podcast. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. Do send us an email. I'll just remind you of the email address, the EIBWpodcast@reachplc.com. Give the video a thumbs up on YouTube. Hit subscribe on the channel. If you're listening on the podcast, we've had loads of reviews coming in over recent weeks, and we're very grateful for them.
Thank
if
you
haven't done already, please do leave us a written review. Even if it's not 5-star, we'll take constructive criticism. We can take that on the chin, and we always want to hear your feedback, regardless of what it is. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news, including our dedicated daily transfer live blog. And for myself and Aaron, we'll see you guys next week.